Good afternoon. This is a particularly sad afternoon to stand before you as the State's Attorney for Montgomery County. This is the third occasion in probably the last 10 days I've been before you speaking about the death of a child in the county. Today, Narges Shafeirad, the mother of Daniel Dana, the young boy was not quite 6 years old, was sentenced for the first-degree murder of that young child back in June of 2015. Judge Nelson Root of the Circuit Court for Montgomery County gave Ms. Shafeirad, who was the mother of Daniel, a sentence of life suspended all but 50 years. I want to echo the words of Judge Root in the courtroom that many of us heard only moments ago. This was an horrific crime. This was a mother killing her own child, killing her for reasons that we may not know, because the precise reasons are known really only to the killer. This crime is a crime against nature. It's unspeakable, and it was evil. The facts of this case are almost too horrific to contemplate that this young child was forcibly fed medication to a point of death, leaving bruises on his face and mouth as he was force-fed medications that led him to a coma and ultimately to his death. The evil of the murder was compounded by the fact that the defendant in this case then tried to hide her complicity in this murder by buying gasoline, faking a car crash, throwing gasoline around the car and upon the body of her now then dead child. The medical examiners were able to determine that the cause of death in this case, because there was no smoke inhalation, actually preceded the fire that she started to hide her complicity in this crime. She used a borrowed car from a friend, used to complete her crime. The defendant in this case was involved in a bitter divorce. But again, the true motive behind how a mother could take the life of her own 6-year-old child, it's hard to even comprehend or to believe in the God, even under the guise of there being a pending divorce. I want to acknowledge Mr. Dana, Daniel's father, who's in court, the courage that he showed being with us here today. Speaking only about his son, if you were in the courtroom today, his words were only for his lost son, Daniel. He did not even direct his comments at the defendant, who was responsible for having taken his son from him. We are joined today, as you can only imagine. This was about as emotional a day in court as we have here in the circuit court. There is a gentleman here who is a friend of Daniel's family, who is going to speak on behalf of the family for a few minutes. Mr. Makan, if I can invite you to the podium.
Thank you for being here. As you guys can imagine, it's been a very emotional day for the family, so they've asked me to say a few words. First, we'd like to thank, the family would like to thank the prosecutor's office for all the work that they've done and their supporting team, the police department, victim services. They've been with the family from the beginning, specifically Mr. Chaikin and Marybeth, Ayres. They've been with us constantly, direct contact, and we thank everyone that was involved in helping us get here today. We also like to thank Judge Root. We know it was a tough day. We know it was a tough call, a very emotional courtroom, and we respect his decision and we thank him for his decision. There's also another side to this that the family wanted me to relay, which the criminal justice system pretty much ends at this point, if you may say, on this case. Today is the sentencing day. But Mr. Dana wanted me to put this out, that the bigger question, which goes beyond just the Dana family, is whether this could have been prevented or not. Whether the domestic violence laws and standards have to be looked upon. Defense used the word campaigning, and Mr. Dana said that's crying or cry for help. It's not my place today to discuss that, so I'll leave it at that. But we thank you, and we thank everyone who helped us get here. Thank you.
If I could, we'll take questions in a second. I want to tell you, I'm very proud of the men and women who work for me here in the State's Attorney's Office, and I will tell you, Steve Chaikin, who is about to leave the State's Attorney's Office, I want to thank him, and I want to thank Marybeth, who's been my partner on some extraordinary journeys in this courthouse before, for their magnificent work in this case. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Montgomery County Police Department also need to be acknowledged in this case. I oftentimes stand here and I will tell you, I think that we are very blessed because we have such extraordinary men and women on the police department. Michelle Smith, who was involved in this case, and I think was engaged in something like 20 hours of interrogation of the mother, the suspect in this case, leading up to her arrest and being charged in this case. I want to thank Detective Smith, Natalie Gwynn, who's another outstanding detective from Montgomery County, and Sergeant Larry Haley, whose name we've often mentioned from this podium in the past. I want to thank all the men and women of the Montgomery County Police Department who've worked with us through this case. Thank you very much again for your efforts. I'll take questions if there are any.
Sir, could you just give us a little bit about the victim? Could you be a voice for him here today about who he was as a child, what he enjoyed, and how he should be remembered?
I'm going to let Ms. Ayres speak to you.
The victim was an average, happy 5-year-old little boy. Throughout our investigation, Mr. Chaikin and I met with his teachers and his school, and they loved him. He was a happy, normal kid that any one of us could imagine as our own, as a relative, as someone that you would see and want to have in your life. I don't know if Mr. Chaikin wants to add to that.
He loved basketball, and he loved the guitar, and he loved going to Sunday school, and he loved his family.
Bruce and Shan, gentlemen.
Mr. Baker, are you up to just take one question? I know the father said in his statement he didn't want to get out right then. He felt that was like in some way failing his son. Can you just talk to us about how he's doing?
Well, he's doing as any father whose son would be taken away. I mean, he's feeling sad, obviously, and every time we go through the system, including today being the sentencing, it's a wound that hopefully from today the healing begins. But he wanted to stand, and his idea was, I want to talk, I want to be able to talk. And he stood there and he tried his best, but the healing begins today, and we pray for it.
Derek Ward.
There was no evidence or no testimony or anything about any prior abuse to the child. Was that investigated at all, and would that have factored in, do you think, in sentencing? Had that been the case?
As unfortunately what happens in a lot of domestic cases, and I think Judge Roop alluded to this in the courtroom today, the allegations that went back and forth leading up to this divorce, which was supposed to be final the next morning, were very similar. There were allegations of abuse both ways, went back and forth between the parties. Nothing was ever substantiated, no charges were ever brought at any point in time. Again, as Judge Roop spoke about in court, unfortunately, what we heard about in this case going on between this couple leading up to what was going to be their final divorce the next day are things we commonly hear in these domestic situations.
Okay, what do you think? Let me ask that question, Mr. Baker. Could the state have done more to protect him?
I don't know that there were no allegations that were ever brought to the state's attention, never indicated that there were sufficient facts for anyone to ever be charged. Most of these allegations came out through the domestic procedure, not really in the context of a criminal matter. It came out in the pleadings in the domestic case.
And there was stuff in there that was
There was certainly
alarming
never-
enough for the judge that he might have had.
Again, there was nothing that arose to the level of giving sufficient information on which a criminal case could be brought. Again, most of these allegations came up in the context of an ongoing bitter divorce.
Okay, thanks, everybody.